are a million ways that you can make a difference, and our generation is already proving that. Get involved with your Turning Point USA chapter or another organization that shares your values.
That was Isabel Brown speaking at an event for TPUSA, the organization founded by Charlie Kirk. Now a host with the Daily Wire, Isabel has long worked closely with Turning Point, including serving as a campus chapter president and the director and host of Turning Point's documentary, The Eye of the Storm.
In this episode, we sit down with Isabel to discuss the rise of TPUSA and the role it will play in the political and religious spheres going forward. I'm Georgia Howe with Daily Wire Executive Editor John Bickley, and this is a weekend edition of Morning Wire.
Let's be honest, even when we're trying our best, most of us still aren't getting enough fruits, vegetables, and fiber in our diet. That's where Balance of Nature comes in. Their fruit supplement is packed with mango, pineapple, wild blueberries, banana, and more, and it tastes amazing mixed into your morning oatmeal, yogurt, or smoothies. Their veggie supplement has powerhouse ingredients like kale, spinach, broccoli, and even shiitake mushrooms, making it easy to add on salads, soups, and savory dishes. And here's what's really cool. They've got this fiber and spice blend that's the only supplement combining 12 spices with 4 whole fibers. What I appreciate most is how convenient they are. No bags, no mess, no measuring, just clean, quality ingredients I can take anywhere. Plus, everything is vegan, kosher, and gluten-free, and they back it all up with independent third-party lab testing. I can rest easy knowing I'm investing in myself and my health. Head over to balanceofnature.com and use promo code WIRE for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus get a free bottle of that fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code WIRE.
Isabel, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. What a tough topic for us to talk about, but so important.
Right. Now, I understand you became not just a member, but a major contributor to TPUSA over the past several years. First, how did you get involved and what was the timeline like?
I did. You know, I said in my original tribute post to Charlie that truly I owe so much, everything really in my life to Charlie Kirk, my career, my family. My husband and I met while working for Turning Point USA, and our daughter wouldn't exist otherwise. And really my faith journey as an adult, just marveling at this extraordinary young man's quest to find the truth of God and to be inspired by God every day. As he said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." But on the career front, I was just another college student in 2017. Feeling isolated and alone, and like there wasn't a voice for conservative or Christian values on my college campus at Colorado State University. I was pre-med studying biomedical sciences and set off for medical school with the hope of being a trauma surgeon when I received a random Facebook ad for Turning Point USA's Young Women's Leadership Summit, the annual conference they put on for college-age women, from some guy named Charlie Kirk, who I'd never heard of before. But something in me told me I had to attend that event, and I'm so glad that I did, because from moment one was just in complete awe and wonder at the courage of this young man to help give a voice and a platform to other young conservatives across the country, and to look at young people to say, we can transform our culture and our society for the better. We don't have to wait until we're older. So like many thousands of other students over the past few years, I started a Turning Point USA chapter at Colorado State University in the fall of 2017, hosted Charlie on our campus for one of his first major speaking events in February of 2018. And he very quickly became a dear friend and very close mentor to me, as he encouraged me to listen to God and where God was leading me in a different direction, not to work in a fluorescently lit hospital for the rest of my life, but instead to have the courage to speak the truth to our generation on college campuses, in the digital space, and everywhere in between as well. I've worn lots of different hats for Charlie over the years. I co-hosted his radio show with him for about a month a few years ago when he lost his voice, so that every time he coughed, they had to mute the microphone and I would pick things up. We did all night live streams related to the 2020 election, which was so fun for several weeks on end. Obviously worked with Turning Point USA in many capacities, but I truly owe this platform and the voice that I've developed over the past few years to Charlie's leadership and mentorship in my life.
So it sounds like you got involved right when Turning Point was kind of blowing up across the country. Now, tell us a little bit about what the temperature was like on college campuses at that time. Had people heard about Charlie Kirk? Was he kind of breaking in, or were you still in the first wave where you were a little bit odd and like the odd man out on campus?
A little bit odd is the perfect representation of that, Georgia. Truly, when I started this chapter, very few people had heard about Turning Point USA. College Republicans had been an organization for a long time. There was a handful of campus activism groups that were talking about these issues, but none with the effectivity and the punchy language that Turning Point used early on. We were handing out buttons on campuses that said socialism sucks and big government sucks, which got the ire of many of our professors and administrators on campuses across the country. But it really was just me for a very long time, setting up a rickety folding table and handing out these buttons and trying to have these one-on-one conversations that Charlie was so well known for and was so deeply passionate about. But to be there right at the beginning of the explosion of this organization was so eye-opening, because from the beginning, the radical, violent left was very threatened by the idea of a Turning Point USA. As I mentioned, I hosted Charlie for one of his first major campus events in 2018, February of 2018. And we were a bit of a unique circumstance being in a state like Colorado, where the radical left was already starting to organize and mobilize against young conservatives. But even back then, 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, Antifa was there ready to protest, ready to be violent. The National Guard for the state of Colorado had to be deployed because of threats to the people in attendance and protesting peacefully outside. And it just showed me almost immediately the potential of this organization and the difference that Charlie knew he could make if he just had the courage to keep showing up every day. And look what's happened, 8 years later from there.
Now, I know College Republicans has been on campuses for decades. What was different about TPUSA that was so game-changing about you guys?
I look back on so many memories I had as a student activist and now working with so many students across the country over the past few years, and especially conversing with them in the digital space. Whereas I think the last several generations didn't really have a heart for youth outreach when it came to right of center organizations or the Republican Party. There was this expectation that young people will always be leftists. The old saying, if you're not a liberal when you're 20, you don't have any heart. And if you're not a conservative by the time you're 50, you don't have a brain. That was so incorporated into right-wing messaging in politics throughout my lifetime. Charlie saw past that. He saw an opportunity to reach young people in the state that they were in right now, in the brokenness of our country as it pertained to young people now, and convince them of a different way of life and a different perspective. But I also think in the midst of that, there was this idea of changing people's minds, right? The general rule of College Republicans or other youth organizations, and they did amazing work, incredible work in building coalitions and a community sense on college campuses, but they didn't have a sense of going out and reaching a hand out to students who might vehemently disagree with your messaging today, but could be pulled over and convinced of your arguments tomorrow. If you kept your heart rate lower than the person you were talking to, Charlie always gave me that advice, and just saw someone as a person, someone who was going through something difficult just like you were, and knowing we can get to a better outcome if we're willing to have the tough conversations now. So I think that's what really set Turning Point USA apart.
It strikes me as an evangelical perspective, and the alignment there of a faith orientation with a political orientation makes a lot of sense.
That's absolutely right. I never would have put that together in my mind until now. And I've said this a few times on Fox News this week, but Charlie never set out to have this religious revival, at least not to my knowledge. In starting Turning Point USA, the key pillars of the organization at that time were free speech, free markets, and limited government. And that's basically all we ever talked about. But I think as Charlie went on this deep investigative journey to find the source of truth and to share truth with people, it became obvious to him that that's inextricably linked to God and to his faith and the source of all truth for the universe. And he had such a heart and such a joy and a fire and passion for that he really wanted to share that with other young people as well. So look at what we've seen this last week. The greatest impact of Charlie Kirk and his greatest legacy is undoubtedly the fact that millions upon millions of Gen Zers around the world went to church for the first time on Sunday, purchased their first Bible this week, prayed for the first time. I have probably 5,000 to 10,000 DMs in my Instagram inbox asking, how do I pick up this book, the Bible that I've never read? Where do I start praying? Please walk me through this. I want to do this all for Charlie.
We all talked about that Sunday. We all saw that at our churches. And I was blown away. Our church service was unlike any service we've had in years. And it really did feel like a revival. And I think there's so many people, I'm hearing the same testimonies from people. It's pretty remarkable.
Now, there's a new initiative with TPUSA called TPUSA Faith. Are you involved with that? And if so, just tell us, what is that organization and how does it differ from TPUSA?
Yeah, I was never very intimately involved with TPUSA Faith when I was working for the organization over the past few years. And to be clear, I don't work for them full time anymore now, although I love lending a hand wherever I can to this next generation of students and trying to inspire them. And I'm sure we all will be very intimately involved with Turning Point USA in the wake of Charlie's death. But TPUSA Faith was a new initiative that was started a few years ago as Charlie started on this journey of understanding the source of truth really has to come from God. And therefore, this revival and this change in our country to save America cannot be isolated to just the political sphere, but it has to include our religious leaders as well. So they've put on events over the last few years like pastors, summits, and retreats for people in positions of religious influence to have courage and to gather together and understand their obligation to transform the world. I was incredibly privileged 2 weeks ago, yesterday, 2 weeks ago yesterday, to have the opportunity to share the stage with Charlie during one of his last speaking events on this earth. And I'm incredibly humbled to have had that chance. But he spoke in the last few minutes of his speech about our calling as people of faith to be of salt and light. And a lot of people misunderstand that concept, he said, but he articulated it perfectly. Both salt and light, despite being so different from one another, had a key property of transforming whatever they came into contact with. They don't conform, they don't affirm, they transform whatever they come into contact with. And that's exactly what his calling was for pastors, for priests, for people hosting religious podcasts, for anybody in this conversation about faith. We have to be in the world and constantly trying to transform the world, not just constantly looking ahead to the next one.
Now, as someone who's pretty deeply involved with TPUSA, or at least in the past, they have a massive logistical challenge ahead of them. I mean, I heard there have been tens of thousands of requests for new chapters. I don't know what the final tally is right now. As of yesterday, it was like 54,000. And I believe there was something like 3,500 current chapters. So that's like a 20x explosion just in less than a week. What is the process for starting a new chapter, and what will it take for them to bring on those new chapters?
I could not be more excited about their inundation of requests. And that 54,000 figure, I think, was as of about 12 hours ago. So I'm sure it's exploded even further from there. But Andrew Colvett, the executive producer of The Charlie Kirk Show and long time member of Turning Point USA, has said a couple of times over the last few days that Charlie has previously stated in the last few months a goal to put a Club America, the high school version of Turning Point USA, chapter in every high school in the United States of America. And a few months ago, everyone said, Charlie, that's insane. We would never be able to do something like that. And here we are, and they are absolutely on track to be able to do that within the next few months, which is mind-blowing and just goes to show the impact of Charlie's life. Logistically speaking, it is absolutely a challenge, but I have no doubt in my mind their team is more than equipped to handle whatever is in front of them. The process is usually pretty simple, as it has been over the past few years. You fill out a form on their website, tpusa.com/get-involved, and you are matched from your region, wherever you live in the country, with their regional field staff that is out in the field working with the high school and college chapters in each particular region of the country. They help you organize your meetings, get all of your resources to you, help get all the buttons that you can hand out that says socialism sucks to the people in your school community, and organizing speaking events a lot like the one that Charlie was unfortunately killed at this last week, but really mobilizing the ground game effort from the grassroots perspective. And their field program is the best of the best. They have done this for a very long time, and I have no doubt they'll be able to continue that torch forward.
Now, speaking of bringing the torch forward, what do you envision is going to come of these in the next few years for Turning Point USA? Do you have any intuition about what things could look like over the next few years?
You know, I don't think anyone can answer that question just a week out from what we've experienced, Georgia, but I think it's really telling that there is this sense of unity and linking arms across the whole spectrum of the conservative movement, that whatever people may have experienced in the past in terms of silly competitiveness on your podcasts or different organizations competing against one another, none of that seems to matter anymore. And to borrow a phrase from many of the people that I've been talking with behind the scenes on all of this, this is a whole new chapter for the country, a whole new chapter for a generation, a whole new chapter for the conservative movement. So I envision there's going to be a whole lot of people ready to link arms and help share this microphone that Charlie so beautifully dominated as the leader of this youth movement over the last several years, and do our absolute best to carry his legacy forward, knowing that there will never be another Charlie Kirk. This man's shoes are completely impossible to even remotely step into, literally, because he had giant shoes as a big guy himself. But the movement is so ready to link arms and to continue his real blueprint for the idea that this young generation will save America.
Well, Isabel, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me and for honoring this great man's legacy. I'm so grateful as a friend.
That was Isabel Brown, host of the Isabel Brown Show on the Daily Wire, and this has been a weekend edition of Morning Wire.